Welcome to the Business Pulse, a feature of the Freedom Chamber. If you aren't a member of the Freedom Chamber, you are missing out. This is a fantastic organization, chock full of goodness, and you want to join. If you are a member, thank you for being a faithful follower of the Business Pulse, which is now on its 59th episode, if you can believe it. We are missing Chuck Barham today, but we have my dear friend Dean Owen, who is just absolutely an incredible CPA and financial planner. And if you're not utilizing Dean's services, you might go bankrupt before the end of the year. I'm serious. You've got to talk to this guy. It's incredible. So as we do every week, we bring you insights into global events and how they affect your portfolio, how they affect your life generally. And as Dean will tell you in a minute, we have an incredible batting average here. We're really knocking it out of the park. So we're feeling good about that. And, that may sound like bragging, primarily because it is, but, we just love Donald Trump. So we want to do homage to him by being every bit as braggadocious as he is. Everybody says so. So, okay, here we go.
And Rod,
I'm sorry.
The truth of it is, if we don't tell them, they won't know.
Well, they won't. That's right.
And it's not bragging if we're accurate. And we have a lot to talk about.
We've spent 59 episodes making predictions that came true. I think that's worthwhile. And that's actually a pretty good feature for your Freedom Chamber membership. So don't miss out. Okay. So first up, Canada trade. What is Mark Carney thinking? Well, of course, we know what he's thinking. Every time he attacks Donald Trump, his numbers go up in Canada. The socialists up there just love it. Ditto for that thug, Doug Ford, who is the premier of Ontario, who says he's going to, do horrible damage to red states. Come on, guys. This is just foreign election interference. That's all it is. Doug Ford wants the Democrats in power, so they will let him continue freeloading, and that's exactly where Mark Carney is too. You may not know this, but it's worth remembering that the Prime Minister of Canada isn't even really a Canadian. Now, that's overstating the case because, of course, he was born in Canada. That's all true. But this is a man who holds citizenships in 3 countries. This is a man whose last big job was as governor of the Bank of England during Brexit, during which he did everything in his power to keep the United Kingdom subservient to Brussels and fought the Brexiters as hard as he could. So guess what? He packed up and brought his act to Ottawa, where he has done everything he can to just ruin the Canadian economy and get in bed with China. Here's a news flash for Mr. Carney, and one he's perfectly well aware of. So I'm actually very confident we're going to get to the trade deal that the Canadians actually agreed to last week before rejecting it. The fact is 70% of Canada's exports come to the United States. There's nobody else who's even close. There's nobody else who's even quite 10% of that. And there's nobody in the world who can absorb those imports, even if they could get them, because a lot of those imports, or from the Canadian perspective, exports, come to the United States for a reason. For example, oil and gas pipelines that, I'm sorry, you can't just redirect to China. Ain't gonna happen. But it's more than that. The truth is that Mark Carney has done everything he can to enable the so-called First Nations, the Canadian term for Indian tribes, to block any expansion of pipeline capacity from Alberta to the Pacific. They can't export to China a drop more than they are. Second, they've blocked repeatedly pipelines directly from Alberta to the eastern part of Canada, where, by the way, most of the people are. So guess what? Eastern Canada gets its Alberta oil by way of pipelines that run through the United States. How is this trade war going to work? There is no way for them to fix this anytime before this gets completely out of hand. So Donald Trump hitting them with 50% tariffs on steel and autos and, of course, other things. This is a country that has been basically blockading our dairy farmers for decades. A 280% tariff is not a tax you collect. It is an embargo preventing American producers from selling in their market while they sell freely here. Those days are over. No more freeloading. We're not going to let Canada get away with not being able to defend itself against a Boy Scout troop while they freeload on the American taxpayer for their defense. They're going to have to grow up or deal. And if they want to take the latter, if they actually want to take their lumps, if Doug Ford and Mark Carney continue down the path they are, what will happen is what we saw this week when the Ford Motor Company announced it is pulling production from China entirely. Well, we can do that to Ontario too. And you know what? Those auto plants would look a heck of a lot better in Tennessee. So you can have the best trade deal America has ever offered any trading partner ever, or you can deindustrialize. Those are your choices. And honestly, I'm with Donald Trump. I'm fed up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, there's so much more stuff going on. A little bit of economic numbers. You know, the Dow and this S&P have come back after taking a little bit of a beating the last few weeks, and that was not unexpected. You go through these cycles, and you'll have a few down weeks, and then have several good weeks. We have seen a rotation in our market where our small mid caps are now seriously outperforming the Magnificent Seven. That is a direct result of Trump's deregulation. That's where that's coming from. So, you know, for several years, the Magnificent Seven was the only trade on the block. Everything else was flatlined or bleeding out cash. Now it's all reversed. The Magnificent Seven are a drag on the market while the Russell 2000 is just killing it. So lots of good stuff there. Kind of watch the rotation. We talked about how big a deal the deregulation is and what Trump has done, and we're starting to see it. I suspect it's going to continue on for a significant period of time. We are reindustrializing America. Met somebody earlier this week. His company, that's all they do is they go into Fortune 1000 companies and help them automate and use robots and automation to do jobs that are traditionally very dangerous and risky for people. So the reindustrialization of America is happening. It's happening here in my backyard with a big data center and laser enrichment and probably a small nuclear reactor going in the next 24 to 48 months. You know, it's just lots of good stuff happening right now. We're seeing oil come back down. Last time I looked, it was $82, $83 a barrel. So, you know, whatever happened to the screaming liberal idiots that said it was going to hit 250, you know, just, you know,
No
like we've said 100 times, stop listening to idiots. Stop listening to people who, they're either liars or stupid. One of the two. Just look at their track record. If they don't have a positive track record, why do you think they're going to start now? Most of them are old enough, they're not going to change their core personality at this point. So, you know, be careful where you get information from. And of course, that ties right into the Freedom Chamber, what they're putting out. I know they've got a webinar tomorrow on healthcare options after some crushing expectations for the inflation in the healthcare sector and premium inflation coming in January. So make sure, jump online with the Freedom Chamber, take in that information, figure out a way to help you save a significant amount of money and still keep your employees healthy.
Well, and you're talking about energy, and I certainly want to circle back to a little of that because we're gonna get to Iran here in a bit, but the truth is the people complaining about $83 a barrel oil were promising us that $250 a barrel oil you just referenced, and that was hooey. And we heard those same voices say those same numbers in 2008. And sure enough, oil actually did get to $147.50 in 2008 before it dropped in half because supply and demand still works. And so there are multiple aspects of that. One is that the Navy is escorting a shocking amount of oil out of the Persian Gulf. We have had a 400% increase in transits just in the last 14 days. That's remarkable. For the 30 days preceding, we actually got 20 million barrels of oil a day out of the Persian Gulf. That's actually quite extraordinary. That's more than the peak before the war. So, that's stabilizing prices. That's doing a lot of good. Venezuelan supply coming back online. That's really good. That actually lines American pockets because it's American companies who were stolen from, companies that went in and built the Venezuelan oil industry. And of course, everybody on TV wants to tell you, oh, they're robbers. They were stealing the inheritance of that poor third world country. No, they weren't. If you had some acreage in Midland, Texas, Chevron and Exxon and the rest of them would happily pay you a royalty for drilling on your land. You know how much that royalty would be? 20%. In Venezuela, it was a 50-50 deal. It was as generous as it gets. And they went in there and created an oil and gas industry from scratch. And then the socialist government stole it all from them. So American companies are going back in. The deal terms are great for Venezuela. They're great for America. Everything's good. And that oil is coming back online too. This is a country with the largest proved reserves in the world that had, because of socialism, because they are a kleptocracy that can't run itself, these guys were exporting a few 100,000 barrels a day instead of millions of barrels a day. That's reversing now. We're also seeing, pipeline construction that'll bring more oil from Alberta if Mark Carney doesn't screw it up. So all these things are helping the price of oil. But what I don't understand, and I think it's worth noting, first, Joe Biden's gas prices were higher. I don't remember these people complaining about that too much. Second, and think about this one for a second. Second, $83 a barrel oil puts money in the pockets of American workers all over North Dakota, Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, and a dozen other states, and nobody looks at that side of the equation. All of this is enriching America. And not only that, but we have an incredible amount of business shifting from the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of America because they can get cheaper, safer, more secure supply here than they can from Russia or Qatar. And that is a sea change. We are shifting the center of gravity for an entire industry on which the entire world runs to the United States. And that will have huge impact on investment and job creation and wage growth, not for a year, not for an election cycle, for decades. And that's happening now.
And then you think about the national security interest of us being the primary supplier of oil to the world. If China is dependent upon the United States for oil, is she going to invade Taiwan? Of course not. We tell China, we'll sell you all the oil you want at fair market prices, not discounts. But all what you want, we'll send tankers over there just as fast as you can unload them. And that creates an environment where China is dependent on America for her basic necessities of life, meaning oil and energy. So,
Absolutely.
There's some world-changing stuff going on. This president's put in place, started to push through. That's going to just make this world a much better place for our children, our grandchildren. Iran, we haven't killed enough of them yet, but we'll eventually kill enough of the IRGC, and the Anish army will take over. There's apparently a lot of stuff going on inside Iran internally with lots of turmoil. The government wants to do a deal and get us out of war. The IRGC does not. Part of it is if we ever get a peace deal with Iran, the IRGC is probably going to get their heads cut off. And that's why they're dragging it out. They don't have any choices. I think there's also, that may be the reason Russia's still at war with Ukraine, because if they ever stop, it'll crush the Russian economy because it's built on a war machine right now. But eventually it will stop.
Life expectancy drops.
Yeah, radically. So lots of stuff going on with our our enemies, our adversaries, that is very good for America. And we just, man, it's time. We are living in mankind's golden age. And it's only going to get better from here.
Well, and that's the thing. It will get better from here if we make good choices, if we don't screw up and hand the socialists power, if we don't blow it. But yeah, the beginning of anything is smaller than its end if it's successful. And this is the beginning of an industrial super cycle in the United States. We spent 30 or 40 years deindustrializing this country in many respects, and now we're building it back. And it takes a minute to go from an investment to a shovel in the dirt to a building that can contain workers to hiring them to actually producing a profit. But once it gets going, oh baby, here it comes. To drill down just a little bit on your point about Iranian oil and China, China's really in a bind. They have been getting, and if you guys have been listening to us on the Business Pulse, you know this, but a lot of people haven't. 40% of China's oil has been coming in a steeply discounted form because they buy all this illicit, illegal, sanctioned oil from bad actors. Chavez's Venezuela, or Maduro's Venezuela later, and Iran. China was buying 90% of all of Iran's exports. 90%. None of it's going anywhere else to speak of, just China. Russia's oil, huge percentage of Russia's energy going to China. And the Chinese play hardball, so they pay a fraction of market price. And before this war, the market price was lower, so they were paying a fraction of that lower price. And now they have to buy on a global market. And that really puts a crank in their economy. I mean, they are really in trouble. This is a country that is highly dependent on exports. Domestic consumption can't possibly keep up. It's about half of any major Western country. And so they have to sell. They have to sell. And they're in much the same boat as Canada, not to the same degree, but they have to have the American consumer market. So this just doesn't work for them. More expensive oil messes with the lives of the world's largest energy importer. And all of us who lived through the 70s know how. So that's where they are. And what Trump has done with Iran is the death knell for an entire generation of Chinese cheating, where they used all these illicit subsidies to cut their cost structure enough that they could illicitly outcompete Western companies and drive them out of business and drive up American and European unemployment. Those days are over too. And that is the part of this energy story that everybody seems to be missing. Another part of it, of course, is inflation. And I know you touched on it a minute ago, Dean, but tell us a little bit about Truflation versus BLS data, because I think it's a big deal.
It is. Truflation analyzes something like 300,000 data points in real time every single day using the internet for pricing. So if you can't find a can of beans that you've been using from Kroger, you can get it from Amazon, right? So, but you can still measure the price difference of that item. And they're doing that in real time. The BLS they're so far behind. They're so archaic. They're still calling people and saying, how much do you think you can rent your house for? And sending people out to grocery stores and to Walmarts with a checklist to say, how much does this item cost? And if you can't find that item, find a substitution, which allows them to ratchet up the numbers, which gives the Fed coverage to keep inflation interest rates high. Speaking on that, we've got a Jackson Hole meeting coming up this week, and about a 40% chance of a rate hike, about a 60% chance of a hold. We'll be watching that as we go. I honestly believe that inflation, our interest rates are twice what they need to be right now. And there's
absolutely.
And there's a record small spread between the 2-year and the 10-year. It's less than a point. So that makes no sense whatsoever. So this being politicized, we all know it. Eventually it's going to come undone. I'm hoping that starts to get turned around here pretty quick because we're getting close to the midterms. And that's what everything's about. That's why the pause with Iran, and we stepped away from using bombs to contain them, to use an economic force. President's worried about making sure we don't have any lives lost over there between now and the elections. So I think you'd made a note on another show that you were feeling pretty good about the midterms. I am too. I don't want to make predictions, but man, it looks like the Republicans should have a field day.
Well, you bring up a really good point here. Everybody is certain that the midterms are lost. Well, there are two sides to that. So the first one is the Iranians think that Donald Trump doesn't think they're lost and is therefore going to modulate whatever he does to play to a midterm audience. That is the thinking of a group of people who don't have meaningful elections and have no idea how our system really works. They are correct that past administrations have reacted that way. They don't have the measure of this president, which is kind of remarkable. After 6 years as president, you would think they'd have learned something. Donald Trump wrote off the midterms 5, 6, 10 years ago. Donald Trump is not stupid. He understands statistics. The odds of the party in the White House winning a midterm election are abysmal historically. So you may rest assured there is not a single Trump strategy that is dependent on us winning in November. They've structured everything in a way where they can keep going. Now, they don't want to lose. Obviously, he's just going to get impeached again. They're going to do all the things. They're going to drag everybody they can through the investigation racket. All of that stuff is true, and we won't get any legislation passed if they win. So clearly we want to win, but the president doesn't expect to win. He's just trying to win. Those are very different things. The other piece of that is he's right to try, and here's why. The truth is, the Democrats keep nominating crazy people like Abdul El-Sayed in Michigan, who is now telling us, I don't know if you saw this, Dean, but he just did a long form interview with Jesse Waters on Fox in which he equated circumcision to castration and wants doctors and parents to be able to castrate their children. Okay, I'm sorry, one of these is not like the other. And that sounds like crazy talk, even in Michigan. So, if they want to hand us a gift, they can just keep doing what they're doing. That definitely boosted Mike Rogers' chances. And that doesn't mean Mike will necessarily win. But I would bet pretty decent money on Mike Rogers pulling this thing out. And Sununu in New Hampshire. And I don't think Ossoff is necessarily out of the question. I think we could beat him. I'm definitely concerned about the Thom Tillis seat in North Carolina. I'm not at all concerned about Tallarico in Texas. Ken Paxton's going to win that. I'm not a bit concerned about Susan Collins. I think she holds her seat because she's running against a crazy too, and she's pretty good at pulling these things out at the last minute. So, okay, if you're not going to lose the Senate and you've got a decent chance of actually maybe a net gain, very small net gain, that's actually possible. What about the House? Well, everybody just assumes we're going to lose the House. But here are the numbers. Charlie Cook has put out his most recent analysis of all these races. And for the Democrats to win even just 218, that means they have a 1-seat majority. For them to win 218, they have to win 2/3 of the actually competitive House races. That just doesn't sound all that likely. It's possible you could have a wave. I don't see any evidence of a wave. So if there's no wave, if it's a normal year, that math ain't mathin'. So yeah, Donald Trump could win the midterms. The Republican Party could win the midterms. Let me tell you how we're going to lose the midterms if we do. We're going to lose them because midterms are low turnout elections. And right now, a lot of Republicans are demoralized. They couldn't name 3 achievements of this administration. And when you point one out, they say, well, but he hasn't done such and such thing that I wanted done. Well, first of all, that's loser talk. And second, half the time when they tell me he hasn't done a particular thing, he actually has. You're just not reading. You're just not paying attention. And, that's fine. You can say, oh, well, it's the president's job to inform us better. Is it really, though? You have more information at your fingertips than you've ever had in the history of humanity. You've got a supercomputer on your phone, for heaven's sake. You've got AI tools. You've got Google. You've got everything in the world. And you're not informing yourself before one of the more consequential elections that this nation's ever going to have. The problem's on you. And if you are in that boat, if you are one of these panicking losers, honestly, you deserve to lose. You deserve the rape and pillage the Democrats are going to carry out against you. So clue in. We have on my site, rodmartin.org, a list today of the top 25 Trump achievements. If you can read even half of that and not see that it is worth calling up your friends, driving them to the polls, and making sure that in a low turnout election, we turn our people out and thus win. Yeah. If you can read even half of that list at rodmartin.org and not see that you need to jump on it and do your part, you just aren't paying attention, and we can't help you. But the truth is, this is winnable. This is winnable.
It is. And here's the trick they use. Okay, Donald Trump ran on a campaign to eliminate tax on Social Security. 6 months into his presidency, he got rid of tax on Social Security for 92% of America.
Yes.
He got 92% of that promise made in 6 months. Well, he hasn't got there yet. We haven't killed enough IRGC members yet. These things are ongoing. They take time. We talked about it last week. There are a significant number of court cases and subpoenas being handed out for bad actors. Looks like Fauci's going to go down. And we talked about that it was over a year ago. Yeah. We talked about it just takes time to get bulletproof cases built, but they're being built, and we're starting to see it. These things are happening, and they will be glorious for America, because I believe it's within the next 2 elections cycles, we'll get rid of a lot of the Chinese influence in our government. There have been some major Supreme Court case wins that allows the president to terminate people who are not going to pull the line and do what's best for America. Just a lot of good court cases have come out in the last, 24 months.
It's incredible.
Yeah. But there is no magic button, right? No. You don't have the magic buttons where you push a button and something shows up from Home Depot. It don't work that way. It takes time. And I know, even I hear
it just wasn't. And we gave the government to Obama and Biden for 12 years. Did you think you were going to fix it all in a week?
Yeah. And I just here with the laser enrichment for enriching uranium, that plant that's going in here, and a data center, and all that kind of stuff that's happening. It's, they've been tearing up the ground for 6 months. Yeah. They just get the ground ready before you can ever put the first shovel in it. So it takes time. And right now it's working well. But you look at the timing, it's really interesting for me, because Tesla has sold out all of its semi-trucks, self-driving trucks, through 2030. Every one of them they can make, they've already got sold. Now, where the jobs, those truck driver jobs, where are they going to go? They're going to go construction field at a time when we're building plants and we need all the construction labor we can get. It's lining up really nicely, but you got to look more than 2 feet in front of you. You got to see down the waist a little bit to see what's coming. But markets are doing well. That tells you something. Unemployment's doing well. That's telling you something. We're creating more job openings with immigration. It looks like the number I used last week was 5 million immigration deportings. I think probably I was way underestimating that number. So that's creating a lot of jobs for our lower income, middle income workers. It's creating some housing flexibility. Lots of good stuff going on with that. We don't have a whole lot of immigrants in where I live in Western Kentucky. So we're not seeing the effect on housing that you will be seeing in Minnesota. And we're going to see housing prices crash in Minnesota once you start boarding, several thousand at a time. So,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
and
We are
that's great.
actually we are actually coming to the end of our time here.
Yeah.
We actually have to conclude this, but it's been
Yes.
wonderful being with all you guys. We want you to tune in every week. This has been just a joy to do now for 59 episodes, and we thank you for your support. I'm Rod Martin. You can find me online at rodmartin.org. That's rodmartin.org, where we do daily geopolitical analysis. Fox Business calls absolutely phenomenal. I hope you'll come by and sign up. And my friend Dean Owen, who truly is an amazing CPA and financial planner, absolutely the best of the best. Dean, tell us how they find you.
Well, first I want to give your newsletter a plug. I was literally right before we got on, I was finishing up the piece that went out this morning, probably an hour or so ago. Really great analysis, really helped explain the world the way it's running and why things are happening the way they are and why is this president doing what he's doing. And if people aren't getting your newsletter, they probably don't really understand the world. As far as connecting with me and my team, jump online, owencpa.com. That's OWENCPA.com. Connect with my team, absolute free, no cost whatsoever to connect and help us figure out a way to disinherit the government and not your kids.
Amen. Folks, we're so glad you're here with us. Look forward to being with you next week. This has been The Business Pulse.
The American dream, full of grit, determination, and unthinkable achievements. Building and owning your own business is a monumental task. A place to find guidance, resources, and connections doesn't exist.
Until now. The Freedom Chamber.
A dynamic and innovative organization established to empower businesses across all sectors. The Freedom Chamber. Find us online at freedomchamber.net. Join us today.